goodness.
Just start the video.
All right, so we're trying to be a perfectionist and get a good very heel flip to start the video. But pattern interruption is a good start of a video too, so we're just gonna get through with it. If you want to get better or learn very heel flips, this is the video. And authentic hashtag authentic. Are we still doing hashtags? Okay, let me recover, guys. Let me recover. Okay, so the thing is, when it comes down to improving upon a trick or learning a trick, you always want to be experimenting, but not to the extent where you're never staying or building on top of consistent factors. So the first part of this video is going to be exploring, seeing what works, you know, warming up, and then towards the end, towards the second half of the video, we're going to be approaching a varial heel flip with consistent factors, and you may have heard of them on other videos, you know, concepts or factors, whatever we want to describe them as. Haven't decided yet, such as staying centered over that lead foot, making sure I'm jumping, engaging, making sure that I'm also putting my foot in the same positions, right? Because we want it consistently. Making sure that I'm applying tension through the forefoot, not the heels, even though it is a heel flip, remember, right? It may seem like I'm putting weight on the heel, but it's more on the forefoot. So we're gonna talk about all of that, but first, I think there's a lot of value of revisiting, you know, the more foundational tricks such as the front pop, the heel flip, even the ollie, just to understand a good snap, right? If you're someone who has a front pop like this, where there's not really any pop, and you try and vary heel flips, just understand you're going to be at a disadvantage. And so it's best to revisit and get a front pop where you can get a, you know, a pop, and it's not a front shove. So having said that, same thing applies with the heel flip, but we're going to warm up with, you know, just some ollies. Let me do 3 ollies. 1, 2, 3. All right, engaged, and that's fairly well. You know, usually I'll warm up a bit more and stuff before I'm actually, you know, dialing in a trick, or else stuff like that happens like in the beginning. I mean, it can still happen, but the risk was definitely increased. I was moving a bit anxiously and just rushed. So anyways, front shoves. Let's do 3, 2, 1. You see how I landed with my toes off? That's not something you want, right? So if you're already landing your front shoves, heel flips, very, you know, uncontrolled, you might want to just refine that first, right? And that's why we're revisiting the more foundational tricks, right? So let's do 2 more. Okay, that was better. I landed kind of extended, not controlled at all. Not controlled at all. We're trying to get at least 2 good ones, okay? Slow. Toes still off. The line messed me up. All right, now I'm feeling a little rushed, a little anxious. So you just want to make sure, if you're feeling that when you're learning tricks, you take a second to just reset yourself, take a breath. The reset doesn't take 10 seconds, 1 minute, or 1 second specifically. It's all contextual to, you know, things like how long your session has been, you know, if you're sore, if you need to warm up a bit more, and just so many other factors. For now, just talking, you know, just making sure my sentences aren't like speeded through is a good assessment of whether or not I can take a breath, or I took a breather and I reset. So all right, 2 more front shoves. Toes still off. All right, we got a good one. honestly, I'm gonna have to work with that. I mean, it was good. I just, obviously, there's always room for improvement. There's always room to get better. So I could have got a bit more pop. But we're gonna move on to the heel flip. For heel flips, you know, everyone does them a bit differently. So I want you to, if you're practicing varial heel flips, just, you know, don't be trying to do a heel flip lower or higher because you think, oh, I need to warm up for a varial heel. Just do a heel flip the way it feels most effective for you at the moment. This isn't a heel flip tutorial, so I'm not gonna dive into it, but I'll explain why. You just want to do it the way it works best for you. Might do one. They're not coming out good. Maybe that's why the varial heel earlier just didn't work. That was better. That was like a 7. That's like a 6. I clearly was rushing myself here. Take a breath. Okay.
Oh, that was good.
That's better. I landed a bit in. We're gonna do 2 more. I want to make sure I get some, at least some solid ones.
Reset.
What's up?
Reset.
Reset. Solid. Okay. Felt kind of like halfway good. That's better. I landed a bit too on the front side. So what I'm looking for when I'm warming up on the foundational tricks before the actual one I'm learning is making sure it feels good. Not does it sound good, not does it look good for someone else, does it feel good for me, and then I can move on, right? It's an intuitive assessment you have to have with yourself before you actually, you know, move on to learning the trick, so you can feel like you're warmed up. Okay, so I actually engaged there. It's a good reminder. So now I feel like I'm ready for the varial heel flip. So like I said, first half is going to talk about different approaches people take. And first off, when people are doing a front shove, I see a lot of, you know, emphasis on, what's up?
Continue, it's run weird.
A lot of emphasis on kicking your foot forward, but I want to kind of share how there's not necessary. All right, let's go. All right, so you're gonna deal with stuff outside of your control. You have to make sure you can still stay composed, especially when you're learning something, because it's already frustrating enough, and you know, just kind of placing the attention in the wrong way will not help you, right? So you want to make sure you're focused. Okay, so what I was gonna say is, oh yeah, don't put so much emphasis on forward. Just put the emphasis on bringing the foot back, because as soon as you pop down, you don't have to go forward, right? You just pop down and the board already does the shove for you. Check it out one more time. Straight down. It's shut, right? So a lot of people do this, but they're putting so much power on that shove it where it's unnecessary, right? It's overcompensation. So just bring it a bit lower. But also this is relative to your strength. You know, some of us aren't strong enough to get the full rotation if we put it here, and some of us are strong enough to get the full rotation if we just move it a little bit. So it's very contextual, and it also changes. It also changes depending on if you're doing this over obstacle, you know, down a stair set or whatever it may be. So having said that, you want to make sure what works for you on flat ground first, because that's the base. Then you adjust as you learn how to do this same trick or do these tricks off of obstacles or onto them. We're gonna pause a little bit because Right before the video started, I was like, look, it's calm right now, chill. Watch it get super crazy when we start filming. Sure enough, that happened, and now this. Anyways, something to laugh at. Okay, so now, very heel flip. At first, I talked about not worrying too much about how you do a heel flip when you're practicing, because it's going to change. You're going to adjust with the very heel flip, but since you already know how to do it, you know, in theory, heel flip wise, you want to make sure that's consistent. No, you're good, bro. You want to make sure that's consistent and you aren't freaking yourself out before you actually learn the trick. So now, having said that, I've found that sometimes, well, most times, bringing my foot lower helps me just get a good flip, right? And not put so much emphasis on the flip, because it kind of just skims through it, right? And so what it gets a bit tricky is making sure I'm still centered over that lead foot, even though I put it this low, because I bring the foot lower, my center stays a bit close to the back foot, which is what we don't want to do. So it can feel a little unstable, right? So that's something you want to think about. The wider you are setting up, the more stable you're gonna feel, but the less leverage you're gonna have when you actually go for the trick. For example, this is kind of, it feels very hard to control, but I feel stable on the setup. When I go here, easy to control and have the board spin and flip. That one look worse. Let me try it again. Yeah, easy to spin it and flip it, but I feel a bit unstable. So that's something that if I want to take this trick down some stairs or over something, I might find some trouble with. But regardless, we're doing it on flat ground, so we're still learning and seeing what works for us, so for you. And you know, there's a way we can meet in the middle, right? So not too high, not too low, but just in the middle. So let's try that. Okay, that actually worked a little better. Again, for context, this isn't a trick I have perfect, clearly, because of the introduction of the video, but it's something that I like to experiment with, and I always find easy common ground. So that's for the flick foot, right? You want to play around with, you know, how high or how low. I find that the toes hanging out is very contextual. You know, some people like to have them hanging out a bit more, and then others like having their foot in. I don't know how that works. You know, people do heel flips like this. Oh, people do heel flips with their toes inside the board all the time. So there's no best way. It's only your way. And so, you know, that's very contextual to you. That's why I want you to have your heel flips before, so you understand how that front foot is hanging off, depending on, you know, how you do heel flips. So that when you go to very heel flips, you're like, oh, well, let me hang it off a similar way to how I hang off my toes on the heel flips. For me, I like to feel like I'm grabbing the edge of the board. It really allows me to get that tension on the forefoot properly and not on the heel, because the heel is going to have us feeling unstable and very inconsistent when we go for the flick. So same thing for the very heel. When I do the very heel, whether it's lower or higher, I like to be grabbing onto the board at the edge so I can feel stable, right? So that's for the flick foot. For the back foot, I kind of mentioned it earlier. I like to place it a bit closer to the heel side, because that allows me to get the shove while just focusing on pushing down and bringing it back up, right? Catch. So I just start here. That was bad. I don't know what happened there. Start here, right? That feels so comfortable. Instead of keeping it up here and trying to force the pop, and then kind of compensating by pushing with the midfoot. Check it out. Whoa. Let me do a good one, because it's possible to do a good one. All right. Not to say that's bad, but if you're gonna think about, or if we think about where we can leverage power most, it's through the forefoot, not the midfoot. So you want to make sure you're using your forefoot when you're applying that pressure or that tension. So having said that, let me reset. I feel like I'm like going faster. It's because it's so unpredictable right here. I'm like, I want to get over it.
I'm like wondering if the guy's gonna pop up, walk close.
Where was he?
In back of me, like all the way over there.
Oh.
He's like yelling crazy.
Okay. Reset. Compose. Okay. The back foot, yes, you want to find where it works for the front shove. And then I found that as far as it pointing out or in, that's very contextual, similar to how much your toes are hanging off. You know, everyone has a different anatomy on how they walk, a different posture on the board. So yes, some are probably more optimal, but you know, it's very contextual, and you see very heel flips done in a lot of different positions. So I'm just gonna adjust mine, and you can kind of play around with, you know, bring the foot in, bring the foot out. But what stays constant and consistent for everyone is keeping this back foot a bit closer to the heel side. Again, this is relative. A bit closer for you can mean here, right? Because you're always doing front shove here for whatever reason, it can mean here. Also, the tightness, or you know, whether it's tight or loose of the trucks, that affects where you place your feet on the board a lot. So keep in mind, for context, my trucks are between so there's like very loose, tight, and then very tight. Mine's between loose and tight, right there. That's how I feel. So yes, let's do, the goal is to do 10, and then I'm gonna talk about how they feel after, and we'll see what comes to mind then. Okay, that one, actually we'll say it after every attempt. That one, I didn't really get a good flick, but I did pop it. Like, I felt like the board came high, so that just means I overcompensated with the pop and not really you know, gave a fluid flick. So we're gonna try giving it a fluid flick again. We'll go that way. So one more time. That one felt like I slowed everything down, but I didn't force the flick too much, or even the pop. It matched, it synced up, how I like to think about it. So that was a good one. That's one. Notice my stance is neutral, not too tight, not too wide. Oh, my back foot, like, I don't know what my back foot did, but I felt it touch. Right there, I landed on my back foot which probably means that the way I started was centered over the middle or the back foot. So I want to make sure on these next ones I'm centered over that lead foot as I go for the trick, because we want that to be consistent. Okay, I was going forward. That's a good thing. Okay, again, similar to the first attempt, I popped really good. Didn't really flick right. Or did it make it all the way?
Right now?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Same thing as the first one. I like gave out. I fatigued. That one just felt like, let me go here to the shade. A little breather, and then I'm gonna go that way. So much going on right now.
20 minutes.
In my head. Okay. Right here. Comment also what works for you when you're trying varial heel flips, or what is something you'd want me to elaborate on, and maybe I can answer them in the comments. If not, we'll make a video about it. Endless. The ideas are abundant. Oh, probably my best one. I really felt like I got low and just jumped straight up instead of like coming slightly back or landing extended.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing, right? Many people compensate by jumping backward for tricks that require a front shove or 180s, but it's super important that you're jumping straight up. That's gonna give you way more consistency when you take it down anything, or even on or off different obstacles, right? All right. That was 3 or 2?
Lands?
Yeah.
2, I think. You good? You like cut me off.
I know, I was like thinking too much about where you were. Let's go again. We're gonna get up to 5 and then top. Smooth. Okay, I landed on the back foot.
Yeah.
Not good, but I landed. Another thing is, when you're learning a trick, you don't want to be going too fast where you can't even think, or where you don't want to be going too fast where you can't apply the concepts you already need to be consistent, such as staying centered over that lead foot, bringing the back foot a bit closer to the heel, keeping this neutral. You know, if you're going fast, it can be very hard to like set up because there's the speed that might be already you know, well, you're already unstable when you're learning a trick, right? Because you don't have full control of it most times. And so adding speed is going to add to that instability. And so it's a different thing. If you want to improve the varial heel flip, then you can add speed. But if you're just learning it, just give it attempts at the speed you feel comfortable with. For me, it's a speed where I can just walk, drop my board, and that feels good to learn. Okay, something I noticed is, actually let me land 5. Let me land 5. I landed 3 so far, right?
Oh.
And I fixed what I did, what I noticed is I was doing wrong. Or what I was.
Oh.
5. That felt good.
Oh.
6, they're making sense. And I applied what I was missing. That was a matter of fatigue. But also, because of that fatigue, I was just staying on the back foot when I popped. So, let me make sure I'm reflected. I got 6, right?
Yeah.
Okay, right here. Oh. I think I might have brought my front foot a bit lower on that one. It flipped way too easy. Okay.
Damn.
That one was gonna pop high. Just fell a little too slow. Okay. 7. So I feel right now it's super easy to get fatigued if I just keep going back to back. So at this point, I want to make sure I take a deep breath between every attempt to give every attempt its fair chance.
Wait, how many are you trying to do?
10. So I did 7 already. 3 more. Now I feel like I'm like kind of giving it all I got. So I'm just gonna be worried of that.
Reset. Oh.
It's really important you stay engaged throughout the whole trick. A lot of times because you feel like you need to get the leg out extended, you know, externally. A lot of times we not only extend it externally, but we also extend the knee, and that doesn't allow us to stay engaged throughout the whole trick. So even though you're externally rotating the hip, I want you to keep this hip hinge yourself engaged throughout the whole trick. One more. Yeah. So you start low, you end low. This is what I mean by that. You start low, engaged, you end low, even if you don't like it, because you want to build good habits. Start low, end low. Okay. At this point, I really feel myself fatiguing, so I'm gonna end it here as far as the varial heel flips attempts. But all right, let me catch my breath. But again, the important thing to understand is the way you do front shove heel flips, it's greatly going to influence the way you go about learning a varial heel flip. So if you are someone who wants a varial heel flip, but is kind of trying to force it, and you know you're forcing it if you don't have front shoves and varial heels, front shoves and heel flips good, you might want to rethink that. You might want to revisit those more foundational. I was gonna mix the two. Foundational tricks. Not because there's a perfect way to learn these tricks, but because it does help you be a bit more effective when you go to trying the varial heel flips. Skate math, classically described as. But having said that, that's the end of this video. If you want me to cover another trick, leave it in the comments. Tell me what, how you approach, you know, being consistent with varial heel flips, or how you're approaching learning them at the moment, and that'll be a cool conversation. In other words, sorry, in a other topic, if you're interested in lessons or coaching, you know, hit me up at profe.carlos and we can talk about what that would look like for you. Other than that, I think I'm gonna end it here. Peace out.